You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
You're not really how I imagine an art critic would look. Can't tell me you never wanted to paint. Seriously, what did you want to be when you were a kid?
I was never a kid.
You're one of those.
On the wedge?
A liar.
Yeah. Ever heard of Joseph Cassidy?
The art dealer?
Mm-hmm. Been invited to his estate.
You got rich friends.
If you could interview any living artist, who do you think it would be?
At the edge of my property, there's a dilapidated little house. In this house, there's an artist.
No critic has spoken to this guy in over 50 years.
Jerome Debney.
It's an honor, Mr. Debney.
Think of the splash it would make. See and describe his current work.
No. I cannot abide such things.
You could be running a major museum soon.
And why would you do this for me?
I'd value a Debney, James. And I'd like you to procure one for me.
What is this about?
Redemption, embezzlement, and forgery.
Kind of underhanded, don't you think? You know what we need to do.
Most people are not what you'd expect.
You know, don't you?
I won't.
The truth.
True. Come on.
Hey folks, welcome to a special episode of the Projection Booth. I am Mike White, and on this episode I am talking with screenwriter Scott Smith about the new movie, The Burnt Orange Heresy. If you have listened to the Projection Booth over the years, you know that I'm a very big fan of the writer Charles Willeford. We've done episodes about Miami Blues and The Woman Chaser, and we'll also be doing one eventually on the film Cockfighter, which was also based on one of his novels. When I wrote about Charles Willeford back in the, probably late 90s, was a very daunting task because Willeford is to me, one of the greatest writers, and to write about a writer took a little bit of self-prodding to finally get that going. Going through all of his books, he covers a lot of similar subjects. He has some very interesting characters. You know, we talked about Junior in Miami Blues, this sociopath, and the main character of Burnt Orange Heresy is very much cut from the same cloth. Burnt Orange Heresy takes into account Willeford's love of art. He is able to take that and graft it onto one of his stories about a sociopath. In this case, it is Jaime Figueres, a Puerto Rican-American art critic who goes on a very plum assignment for an editor to interview a reclusive artist and steal one of his paintings. I won't say much more than that because I really encourage everyone within the sound of my voice to read that book. It is one of my favorite Willefords. It's a little bit different than some of the other things that he did, which were more straight up crime novels. This is very, very fascinating stuff. The movie, does it work? I think so. I was not able to see the best copy in the world because this movie, it was probably released at the worst time you could possibly release a movie in the 21st century so far. It was released limited in, I think, just LA, maybe New York as well, March 5th, 2020. It was since closed because all of the movie theaters have closed. The last report that I read had it opening August 7th. I hope that it doesn't open that day because I don't think that things will be safe enough to open movies there. Maybe it'll get a VOD release. Who knows what the future of this movie is. When I wrote about Willeford, like I was saying, there was talk of an adaptation of Burnt Orange Heresy all the way back then. So it has taken a lot of years for this to finally hit the screen. I found it interesting that our main character was changed to a British person instead of a Puerto Rican American, but yet he still kept the same name. So that was a little bit off-putting just because I had Figueres in my head, but I enjoyed the performance of our main actor. Some of the attitudes towards women are a little outdated, but I think that Smith has updated them quite a bit from where they were, and I want to say 71 is when the book came out. And also, because Willeford is writing from a sociopathic point of view, everyone is just kind of there for Figueres' amusement. They don't feel necessarily like real people, but I think that's very much his interpretation of the world, not Smith, but our main characters. I would recommend that you check that out. Definitely check out the book. I hope you enjoy this interview. Stay safe. Were you always a writer? Did you always love to write?
I liked it in a way that, you like stuff that you're different subjects in school or something, but I didn't really imagine myself making a living doing it. I don't think it seemed like a feasible option. And I took some workshops in college and after college, and it started to seem like something maybe I could do.
And were you always writing fiction?
Yeah, I was always a big reader. I think that was as much as anything. When I was a kid, I definitely was a big reader.
Was both A Simple Plan and The Ruins out before A Simple Plan movie, or was it A Simple Plan book and then A Simple Plan movie?
The Simple Plan book, and then it actually took, I think there were 5 years of a new director every year with the movie, which was a great sort of education in screenwriting, because I got to work with Mike Nichols, Ben Stiller, John Dahl, John Borman, and then Sam Raimi. It was bad luck that was, good luck in the long run.
How was that adapting your own work?
When Mike Nichols optioned it, I met with him. He was just a super sweet, generous guy. I was this shy kid, really, and I like tongue-tied. I could barely talk around him. He said, the book feels very filmic. Just go off and put the manuscript in screenplay form, and you'll be fine. And I did that, and I had like a 290-page script or something. And I think he was like, oh, my God, I don't even know how to talk to this kid. And he brought in Ben Stiller, who really taught me how to write a script, I feel like, working with him. And then a little later, after he disappeared and John Dahl disappeared, I worked for a while with Scott Rudin, the producer, and I learned a ton from him also.
How was it working with Sam Raimi on the final film?
It was great. Sam actually came on, and he liked the Ben Stiller draft, which was a little closer to the book, and the Billy Bob character died halfway through the movie rather than at the end. And Billy Bob was already attached, and at that point, Billy Bob was post-Swing Blade. He was the only reason anyone was giving us money to make the movie. We met with Billy Bob, and he kind of took the two scripts, he laid them out, and he paged through one to where he died, and he paged through the other where he died. And he's like, kind of want to live till the end, Sam. So we ended up doing the latter draft. But Sam's great. He's a Michigan native, funny and self-deprecatory, and just gave me a false sense of how easy and pleasant making a movie can be.
I mean, it must be so interesting for you to not only do A Simple Plan, but then I can't say turn around because it was another 10 years before The Ruins came out, but to also adapt yourself for The Ruins.
I've been very lucky. And that was actually Ben Stiller, who, I met with Simple Plan. He was the one who optioned The Ruins. So I wrote that script for him, which is great to have that opportunity.
How is it to have to kill your babies when it comes to taking out things to make a screen story?
I've always been okay with it. I've done other adaptations that, haven't been made. I did a Richard Stark novel called Backflash, which is a lot of fun. I just finished Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carried, which is a Vietnam War story. I went through a stretch where I was doing a lot of scripts for Ben Stiller's company, none of which ended up getting made, but some of those were adaptations also. I've always kind of felt like you have to break it and then rebuild it. And that's true with Burnt Orange. There's a lot that's not in the book, but I hope that the essence of the book, remains and animates the movie.
How familiar were you with Charles Willeford as a writer?
Not super. I knew his name. I think I'd read the cockfighting one. It was a long time ago. I'd seen Miami Blues, which I liked a lot. Actually, one of the producers on Burnt Orange, that was his first movie that he worked on, Bill Horberg. So I wasn't that familiar, but I loved the book as soon as I started it. It felt dated in certain ways, and I loved the acidic feel of it, but I knew that it was too much. It felt to me like too much for a movie, especially the Bernice character in the book is you have the sense that Willeford knew someone and was symbolically murdering her on the page. He had a bad experience with someone named Bernice. And I felt like it was both to update it a little and also just to strengthen the filmic part of the story. I just felt like Bernice had to be more intriguing and have a little more like depth and complexity to her. I think I started there, and then a lot of the changes came about from not knowing that there was not going to be a lot of money to make the film. And so, basically having it all in one location, condensing it down to, 4 actors. Some of that just came from a, real world consideration about how will this ever get made, which ultimately is true for the shift from Florida to Italy.
When were you actually brought onto it?
It was 9 years from when Bill Horberg, the producer, sent me the book. And there's another director before Giuseppe, Dante Areola. And at that point, for that period, it was always set in Florida. And then eventually the idea came through, to switch it to Italy when Giuseppe came on.
So I imagine you worked on this way back in 2010, and then work on it a bit more throughout the years, probably a lot more throughout the years. But then you have to be working on other things, your own writing, on other screenplays, on other adaptations. I mean, that's got to be an interesting way to mix all those projects.
Yeah. It's one of the things that I've enjoyed about this screenwriting is I like having, 2 or 3 things going at once and going back and forth. This was especially long, but a lot of them take a long time. And if you're pinning everything on one project, I just think emotionally it would be really stressful. The draft of the script, the first draft didn't really change a lot. There was just trouble getting it made with Dante in America. So there's a long period of just hiatus where it seemed like maybe it just wasn't going to happen. It was touch and go throughout, again, just from a money perspective.
Tell me a little bit more about Siberia, because you're credited with both screenplay and the story.
Sure. I've written Burnt Orange. The producer who runs Keanu's production company had read it. At the time, they were thinking about doing an erotic thriller, and they felt like the producer responded to the erotic element of Burnt Orange. And so we just started, talking about, it's a very Hollywood story in the sense that at the time they had funding, Russian money, to make a movie. And so they're like, let's set a movie in Russia and let's have it be an erotic thriller. And that was basically what we started with. By the time we ended up making the movie, we no longer had Russian money. We actually had German money. Nonetheless, it was the Russian element stayed. And the erotic element, there was much more of in the initial kind of draft, and that was kind of whittled away, I think, as just people maybe got a little timid around how far they were going to go with that. But the initial impulse was to do a Last Tango in Paris type movie. All the stories that you hear about Keanu it's true. He's just a great guy, and it was a joy to work with him.
I was so curious because he speaks Russian a lot in the John Wick films, and then he's speaking Russian in this. Does he actually know Russian?
No, they had someone who trained him for each of those lines. He's a hard worker.
I know with some screenwriters, you turn in your draft or whatever, and it's just like, okay, that's great, and then that's it. Like, you're not really involved in the project anymore. Are you actually on set for any of these movies that you're working on?
I've never been on a movie set. I've been on it. I've done a little bit of TV now. I was on a TV set for one day. But yeah, I've never been on any of the movies that got made. I feel like I never felt unwelcome. It was just a personal inclination.
The Burnt Orange Heresy happened to come out at probably the worst time that you could release a movie in maybe, I don't want to say human history, but at least in the history of the 21st century so far.
Yeah, definitely. It was exquisitely timed with the pandemic. There was a screening. I happened to be in LA, and there was a screening in LA. It was and literally the week before everything shut down. Spent the following week certain that I'd caught the virus going to the screening.
So what have you been working on during the pandemic?
I'm doing another adaptation. It's a TV show for Amazon, William Gibson's The Peripheral, sci-fi.
Are you working on that with Vincenzo?
Yes. You know Vincenzo?
Yeah, he's been on the show several times.
Oh, he's great. It's a great group of people. It's Kilter Films, the people who do Westworld, husband and wife, Jonah Nolan and Lisa Joy. Super smart and intimidatingly smart. It's been a fun project. I don't know whether, when it'll ever be made given the state of the world, but we're producing scripts.
Scott, thank you so much for your time. This was wonderful talking with you.
Likewise, and seriously, good luck trying to make something halfway intelligent out of that.